in 1866 at the New Orleans Mechanics Institute, with 25 delegates who filed into the building. A growing crowd of opposition waited outside, while approximately 200 unarmed freedmen, whom approached the institute in parade form to display their support. As the black assembly neared their destination, several bystanders harassed and assaulted them, which ignited several isolated scuffles. Things quickly grew out of hand when Harry T. Hayes, who had served as a general in the Confederate Army, now the sheriff of New Orleans, who had deputized a posse of ex-Confederates to confront a citizens' convention in the city. In a matter of approximately 2 hours, 34 African American supporters were killed, while the wounded numbered 119. 3 of the delegates who had assembled in the Mechanics Institute were killed, while 17 were wounded, and approximately 200 others arrested. The mob attacked the convention hall with the intent to kill, and they infiltrated the meeting hall several times during the altercation to pull the inhabitants outside. Many of those who tried to surrender were struck down or shot. General Philip Sheridan, reporting to the War Department, noted that the peaceful delegates and supporters were attacked with firearms, clubs, and knives in a manner so unnecessary and atrocious as to compel me to say that it was murder. It was no riot. It was an absolute massacre by the police. In July 1945, USS Indianapolis completed a top-secret high-speed trip to deliver uranium and other components for Little Boy, the first nuclear weapon ever used in combat, later to be dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. The mission was top secret, and the ship's crew was unaware of its cargo. After leaving Tinian, the Indianapolis sailed to the U.S. military's Pacific headquarters at Guam and was given orders to meet the battleship USS Idaho at Leyte Gulf in the Philippines to prepare for the invasion of Japan. Just days after delivering the components, at 0:15 on the 30th of July, the ship was torpedoed by the Imperial Japanese Navy submarine First 58 and sank in 12 minutes. Of 1,195 crewmen aboard, approximately 300 went down with the ship. The remaining 890 faced exposure, dehydration, shark attacks, and saltwater poisoning. While stranded in the open ocean with few lifeboats and almost no food or water, the Navy only learned of the sinking 4 days later, when survivors were spotted by the crew of a PV-1 Ventura on routine patrol. A U.S. Navy PBY flying boat crew landed to save those in the water, although only 316 souls survived. The U.S. government kept quiet about the Indianapolis tragedy until August 15th, in order to guarantee that the news would be overshadowed by President Harry Truman's announcement that Japan had surrendered. A mid-air collision between a Boeing 727 and a fighter jet in Japan kills 162 people on July 30, 1971. The military plane was flying without radar. All Nippon Flight 58, a Boeing 727, departed Sapporo Chitose Airport at 13:33 hours local time for a domestic flight to Tokyo Haneda Airport, Japan. The flight was cleared to follow Airway J11L and climb to FL 280. About the same time, at 13:28, 2 North American F-86F fighters of the Japan Air Self-Defense Force took off from Matsushima Air Base for a formation training flight. The instructor in one aircraft and a student in the other aircraft were going to practice several formations in training airspace located 9 kilometers from Airway J11L. While maneuvering during the formation sequence, the instructor inadvertently flew outside the training airspace. He crossed the airway of the 727 and then performed a 180-degree turn back towards the training area. In order to do so, the formation had to cross past the 727 again. The formation was flying about the same altitude as Flight 58, causing a conflict. The trainee was following the instructor and did not watch out for traffic when the 727 approached. The instructor ordered him to break away from the 727. The trainee banked to the left, but the leading edge of the right wing of his F-86F struck the left horizontal stabilizer of the ANA plane. The fighter's right wing broke off, causing the plane to crash out of control, but the pilot ejected safely. The Boeing 727 sustained damage to the stabilizer and entered an uncontrolled descent, where it passed the sound barrier and subsequently broke up. Sergeant Ichikawa, who had only a few hours of flying experience, was able to eject himself and parachute to safety. Everyone on board Flight 58, however, was killed. Yoshimi Ichikawa was charged with involuntary manslaughter, but was acquitted at trial. When several burglars were arrested in the office of the Democratic National Committee, located in the Watergate complex of buildings in Washington, D.C., nobody would have believed they were connected to President Richard Nixon, specifically his re-election campaign, and they had been caught wiretapping phones and stealing documents. Nixon took aggressive steps to cover up the crimes, including using Central Intelligence Agency to impede the FBI's investigation of the crime. President Nixon denied that this constituted an obstruction of justice, as his instructions ultimately resulted in the CIA truthfully reporting to the FBI that there were no national security issues. Nixon urged the FBI to press forward with the investigation when they expressed concern about interference. On July 30, 1974, under coercion from the Supreme Court, Nixon finally released the Watergate tapes. Before the release of the tape, known as the smoking gun, Nixon had also denied any involvement in the scandal.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
He claimed that there were no political motivations in his instructions to the CIA, and claimed he had no knowledge before March 21, 1973. Nixon became the first president in U.S. history to resign. On September 8th, his successor, President Gerald Ford, pardoned him from any criminal charges.